Okay, we're in Perek Halacha Zayin. Daf Yud Beit on base. Zeisim Yachnisu Revius L'Sa. Zeisim olives, when they bring in a revius, meaning if they're ripe enough that they can produce a revius of oil, which is a few ounces, 3 or 4 ounces of oil for each sa'ah, each large measure of olives. Botzeh, you can squeeze them, v'ochel, eat them basode, out in the field. That's where they consider to be ripe enough to eat. Ichnisu chati log, in a way they can produce twice as much, half a log per saw. So then kotesh v'sach basode. Not only can you press them, but you could also use the oil for anointing. It seems that by olive oil, since it's made for anointing, for rubbing yourself with, so that's one of the permissible uses during Shemitah. So at that point, the oil is considered to be significant enough that not only can you eat them, but you can also use the oil for rubbing yourself. Ichnisu shlish, when they can produce a third, and a third is obviously somewhat more, a third of their total product, then kotesh besadi, you can press in your house, and even konis basically press in the field and even bring it to your house. This is similar. The similar thing applies to all years of Shemitah, meaning the other years chayav and ma'aser, they're chayav and ma'aser when they reach this size. All the other fruit of the tree, all other fruits of the trees, the same time when they become suitable to have meiser taken off of them, that's when they become suitable to have shemitah, to be susceptible to permitted to eat during shemitah. Okay, their kedusha Shevi'is then allows them to be eaten at that point. Now I have a header here, which you probably don't have in the Gemara. Zeisim sheichnisu revius l'sa'ah. Oh, you do have that one?
We have it as part of a question. He has that too, but he has a header before that.
Oh, okay. So ma'u shlish. What is a shlish? Which we said when they produce a third, then they're ready. They can be brought into the house, the olives. So the Gemara answers log. When they produce a log, that's considered to be a third of their growth. So masnisa b'imkomos. So our mission is obviously talking about a case. Simple arithmetic tells us shein osim shlosha lugin l'sa, where when they're fully ripe, the olives will produce 3 log per sa'ah. Right? If a third is a log, so 3/3 is 3 log. Okay, and that would be their full of oil. Right? 3 log of oil per sa'ah of olives. Now, finally, we have here why are we makbin on all these things? Because it says ki yovel yovel. It is kodesh tieh lochem. It is holy unto you. Minat sadeh v'gomer. It says tochlu is tvuah. So of course, in that pasuk, mahi kodesh, just like yovel is kodesh, so too af tvuah kodesh. So too its crop is kodesh. And this we learned yovel and shemitah are linked. That yovel and shemitah both have sanctity. Their crop has sanctity, and that's why they can only be eaten when they are fully ripe, and that's why they can only be eaten. They can't be used. The crop cannot be used for any other purpose, such as we saw yesterday to make a salve or an ointment, with the exception, of course, of olive oil, which is made for that purpose of using as an oil. Right? Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina. Now, talking about the kedusha of shemitah, of course, leads us to speak about the kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina, Menashek lekipsa de'ako. Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina used to kiss the bridges, literally the domes, what here means the bridges of Akko. And this is the point where when one left Akko, one went to the chutzar, it's like the bridge, which was the demarcation line. So he'd kissed the side of the bridge, which was affiliated with Eretz Yisrael. Now, it's interesting, you should know that the way I always learned it in the Bavli, until I saw here, the Peirush here, I don't know who this is from, but he says that I always understood Kipid Akko means the roofs. Right? The Gemara Shevi'is. Oh, the Gemara Akko says Akko is half and half Eretz Yisrael. But the Gemara Shevi'is says they used to kiss the Kipei the Akko. So I always thought that meant the domes on the roof. But he actually says it means the arches of the bridge, because it was a bridge which is half in Akko and half in Chutz La'aretz. Okay? Vamar, and he would say, and this makes sense, but in light of the next line, Vamar at kol Yared Yisrael. He would say, until the year of Eretz Yisrael. In other words, he would kiss the demarcation point on the bridge where Eretz Yisrael ended and Chutz La'aretz began. Rabbi Zira over Yardana b'Manoi. Rabbi Zira, whenever he would pass over the Jordan River, he would pass over wearing his clothes. I was covered of the Jordan River, he wouldn't go in it naked. It's more coveted to go in it clothed, and the Jordan River, of course, is holy because it's affiliated with the land of Israel. Rechia bar Abba, misagel, he would roll Bahada Elisis to Tveria in a certain place in Tveria where the Rabbanan would go in order to learn, in order to dive in, called Elisis. He would go to that place and roll in the dirt, because there's a pasuk which says Ki rotzo avodecha esafora esavana, I think it says. He doesn't read that pasuk, but the pasuk says that what? Who brings it down here? All right, so next line. Yeah. Okay, sorry. Reb Chia the Great, Maskal Kipe, he would weigh the stones of Eretz Yisrael. This is an interesting thing. He brings down here that there was an opinion that the stones of Eretz Yisrael are heavier than the stones of Chutz La'aretz. So it would weigh them to find them.
Stone Eretz Yisrael is heavier than a 4 pound.
No, but it's saying that they have denser. That they're denser in Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz. So he would be Maskal Kippah, he would weigh the stones. Rabbi Chanina Maskin Gushayr. Rabbi Chanina would fix, literally means the clumps, but here means he would fix the streets in Eretz Yisrael. L'chaim Mashnema, in order to fulfill this pasuk. Here it is. Tehillim, Ki ratzu avodecha safonea, your servants wanted its stones, ve'saforei chonenu, and they had mercy on its dirt. So Eretz Yisrael is holy, that's why its fruit is holy, and that's why one has to treat it in a respectful manner. Okay?
Things heavier than Eretz Yisrael when you're trying to pack a suitcase on the LA.
Yeah, that's right.
Before you know it,
Maybe that was the shot. He was weighing his baggage. Okay. Now, at what point, therefore, since the fruit is precious, at a certain point, once stuff starts growing on the branches, you're not allowed to cut down the branches anymore, because the branches have Perush Shevi'is on them, so you can't cut them down. So it says more, when is that point? Beishamar, says the Mishnah actually, Beishamar call Ilam Mishioti, any tree when it produces fruit. In other words, when the fruit is already discernible on the branch of the tree. Beisomrim, it depends. Chaluvin, by carobs, it's Mishishalshu. When already they look like chains, in other words, the carob has already been somewhat formed and it's hanging down. Vagafonim, by grapes, Mishigaru, once they fill with water. Vazesim Mishayanotsu. That's when the flower opens up a little bit and you could see the developing fruit inside. V'shakali, and each and every other tree, Mishiyotzi, once it produces fruit, is apparent. Each and every tree, once the fruit is sufficiently developed that it's suitable to take meiser off, mutzah, so you can cut off the branch, because of course then the fruit is edible and it's not going to be hefsei by cutting it down in Shemitah. How much should be on the olive, and you're not allowed to cut it down now. The Kavanaki brings down this story about in another year of Shemitah, and you will be forbidden to cut down the tree or the branch because of Baal Tashchis, right? Because you're destroying a fruit tree. So Rova, Tanakamba says it's a quarter of a measure, a quarter of a kav. But Ramshingam Leomer, Hakol Lefi Hazais, everything is relative to the olive and how much place it's taking up and how precious its wood is, and everything is subjective. There's no objective standard measure. Okay? Says the more. Tani Rav Chinana bar Papa Charuvin Shulshulanu Chanitosan. By carobs, this is a very important fact which we'll have to remember later this evening. By carobs, when they become chain-like, that's when they're considered to have budded. Okay, that's really considered to be the beginning of their growth, even though they actually grow before that. But when it's considered to be the first budding of the fruit, when they look like chains. That's when they can flow with water. Like you say, where when the falls of the water flow. Yozukum Mater Ledo, when rain comes down at its appointed time. Hazesi Mishianatsu, when our olives considered to be significantly ripe, when they're ready to flow, you can see they're discernible within the flower. Rabbi Yena said, oh, you don't have that header, do you? You didn't have that header, did you? Hazesi Mishianatsu, you do have?
Yeah.
Okay. Rabbi Yena, Mishich Nisu Rova. this is when they can produce a quarter of a measure. So quarter measure what? Ma rova nates or rova zaysim is they can produce a quarter of a measure of buds, or that eventually when they grow they'll produce a quarter measure of olives. We would take a lot, so that's a lot less, because the olives will be quite heavy. The buds are relatively light. So therefore, if you go by a quarter of a measure now, then that's going to require a lot more buds than the amount of buds required in order to produce a quarter of a measure of olives later. Rabbi Yehuda said, La'ei donate? La'ei do is like La'ei zo. For what purpose do we need the buds? They're totally useless. Rather, we're looking at the amount of buds which in the future can produce a quarter measure of olives. Okay? Rabbi Yehuda said, well, it's a little bit of a gadita to finish the parak here. Rabbi Yehuda said, it says, when your olives fall off your tree, what's the klola, which is implicit in that pasuk? You only have 1/340th of the original crop, and then of course is the gematria of the word yishal, right? Yishal is yud shin lamet 340th. So that's the klola. Now what's the brach on the following pasuk? Ki eitz nasa perio, the trees will bear their fruit. Magit shelo nasa perio ba'olam hazeh. In Yemos Mashiach, trees which should not bear fruit in this world will bear fruit then. Even we say that sidim ilono srak. Even the trees which are barren in this world will bear fruit in the world to come. So he's saying that that's even going in Moshe Mashiach. Uteina gefen nosdu chelam, the figs and the grapevines gave forth their strength. Magid shlo nosdu chelam b'olam hazeh. He just that they didn't give their strength in this world, but they will in the world to come. V'am Rabbi Yehuda b'shem Rabbi Chama bar Chanina, hameis b'sheva shnei Gog. There was a tradition that the years of Gog Magog, of the war of Gog Magog, will be 7 in number. So somebody dies during those 7 years, ein lo chelek lasi lavo, he has no chelek in the world to come. Amazing. Says the Gemara, Simona, what's a simon to remember this? The achil progamya achil mashtusa. He who eats from the smorgasbord eats from the main meal. But if you're not invited to the smorgasbord, you're not invited to the meal either. All right, so here, if he missed the prelude to Olam Haba, the Melchemes Gog and Magog, he's not getting into Olam Haba either. They're very strange Gemara. It says, Rabbi Yossi heard this Avamar, he said, Vios? Is this proper? Ad Kedun, there still is East to Suva, there still is to Shuva, but here it doesn't mean Shuva in the sense of repentance, but rather there is still a possible return, meaning there's still hope. La'amodas, just because you miss Melchemes Gog and Magog, it doesn't mean that you're going to miss Olam Haba. But once we're at the topic, even in the world to come, the chaverim are still toiling to go from shul to beis medrash. This is like Chazal say, tzaddikim elam menucha lo b'olam hazeh v'lo olam haba. The tzaddikim have no rest neither in this world nor the world to come. So they're constantly going from beis knesses to beis medrash and constantly growing in Torah and Tefillah, even in the world to come. My timer, what pasuk teaches us this? They should go from strength to strength. They will be seen by God in Zion. Rabbanan the Kesarin, I mean, this is a parallel Gemara to a Gemara in the Bavli in Sanhedrin. Rabbanan the in Chelek. Rabbanan the Kesarin, I mean, Ketane Goyim, young Goyim who die, meaning they have not yet merited any of their own personal schus. The Chelos of Nebuchadnezzar and all the armies of Nebuchadnezzar, which destroy the Beis Hamikdash, Lochain, do not rise for the world to come, and none are not judged. They're in perpetual limbo. Concerning these people, it says, "V'yoshnu shenas olam," they will sleep in eternal sleep. V'lo yakitzu, they will not awaken. Meimas hakitnei Yisrael chayin. From when are minor Jews meritorious of the world to come? Rabbi Chia, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi had a machlokas. Chadamar mishivoldu, from the moment they're born, they're ready candidates for the world to come. Chadamar mishidaberu, only from the moment they speak. Madamar mishidaberu Amanam Shivoldu, the Chsiv, it says, V'yavo v'yagidu l'tzidkaso, they will come and say over his righteousness, La'am no lad, to a born nation kiyaso, which he made. So even once they're born, they're ready candidates for HaKadosh Baruch Hu's righteousness, meaning Chiyas HaMeitzim. Ma'adamar Mishidaber, it's only wants to speak, because it says, Zera Yavdenu, a generation which worships God, Yisupar la Hashem Lador, they will be counted for Hashem for all generations. So the Avdenu means once they can do Avodah. What's Avodah? Tefillah. So you have to speak in order to be Mispala. Okay? Tani, we learned, B'Sher Meir, the name of Meir, B'Shiyodea la Nos Amein Basic Knesset, when there's a cut come to Lamabah, once you can answer Amein and Shul. My time and why? Peace Chush, what Pasuk teaches us this? Peace Chusharim, open the gates, V'Yavo Goy Tzadik, and a righteous nation will enter, Shomer Emunim, which keeps its trust. When we darshan that Alti Kri Shomer Emunim Ela Shomer Amenim, my nation which says Amen. Taman Amin Bava, they said Mishamulu, once they get their bris milah. The Siv, it says Nasasi a mecha, if I bear your fear, afuneh, I will turn. And this the beginning of the pasuk he brings down here says that ani gave aminor, a poor person who died in his youth. So as long as he bore the bris milah, so he's just a candidate for Lamabah. Rabbanan Dacham in Rabbanan Eretz Yisrael say even earlier, Mishiv Voldu, from the time they're born, as I said previously. Tziyoni Omar Ish V'ish Yavolipa. To Zion will be said when the ultimate redemption occurs that anybody who was born in it is a candidate for it. Rabbi Lezer Meir Vafil in the following. You know what? Even miscarriages, even fetuses which are aborted, are still candidates for Lamabah. My time, what Pasuk teaches us this: Netzurei unetzurei Yisrael lahashiv. Those who are preserved by Am Yisrael will be returned, and we darshan that unetzirei. Those who are created, even if they are miscarried, Yisrael, they are lahashiv, they are returned to the world to come as well.
Does Neifel have a neshama?
According to this, he does.
Yeah, right, but we've learned.
It's a machlokas here. It's a machlokas. I don't remember what the Bible says about this, but it's a machlokas here.
Isn't one view 40 days? Another view is
Yeah, there's one view in Brett's right. Brachos, Rebbe Antoninus, one said after 40 days, I think. That's right. Another's from birth, yeah. So in any event, so here you see that he holds, that this Gemara holds that it's from the time they're created, which means it's obviously a fetus in the womb. Although I'm sure there are, we see this whole argument here. Nobody knows exactly, but that's his theory. Okay, says the new parak. B'no shuach, white figs. Shvi'is shalem shania. Their shvi'is parameters are different. They're special. How so? Shein osas l'shol shani. They only produce fruit once every 3 years. So therefore, when is the fruit of Shemitah going to grow? When it's b'no shuach. When is the fruit of Shemitah going to grow?
once every 3 years.
So?
Only, obviously, a portion of that. Whatever fraction you want to set up.
Well, what would be the other alternative? That in the second year after Shemitah, you'd say that the stuff which grew, that Shemitah fruit. Right? We're going to learn your alternative. That it's 1/3 of the fruit in general. But the other alternative say that it's the in the second year after Shemitah, that's the third year of the growth. And therefore that's the fruit from the Shemitah year. So, and that's what Mishnah says here. Sheinosa shalosh shonim. Says they produce every third year, so therefore, actually Mishnah doesn't say explicitly, but that's the assumption of Mishnah. The Kedusha Shvi'is occurs during the third year. Rabbeinu Meir parsos, which are Persian dates, Shvi'is Shalem Motzai Shvi'is, they grow in 2 years, and therefore their Shvi'is is the year after Shvi'is. Shenos is l'shtei shon, because they grow in 2 years. Amru lo, so they respond to Rabbi lo amru ela b'no shuach. The only case which we have like that is the white figs, not these Persian dates. Okay, we reject your claim. Ma b'no shuach, what are b'no shuach? Pitura, which means white figs. So now it says where ma b'chol shana v'shana in osos. Does it mean that they grow a little bit every year, and that there's a crop every year, but it's like in waves? right? So you have each crop, you have various different, you have on the tree each year crops from this year, crops from last year, and crops from the year before, right? Because it's 3 years. Or do I say, achas l'sholosh shonim? Or they only start a new cycle once they finish the old cycle. So it's every 3 years they start a new cycle. So is it graduated within the tree itself, or every 3 years do they start afresh? Okay? So b'chol shana v'shana enosos. So it says the Gemara, you know what? Each and every year they produce, like you said before. So there's staggered fruits in each and every tree. Just said that each wave is not completed until after 3 years. So I know from which year the specific fruit in question is. So you tie a knot around them. In other words, you tie different color bands on each year of fruit to know which year it's from. Okay? You stick pins in them, markers, and that's how you know. Tani, we learned you have a tree which budded, and by trees we go after budding, when determining when the chayv and meiser. So vis-a-vis meisers, there's an opinion which holds that the time when you determine meiser is Tu B'Shvat. Shemitah goes always by Rosh Hashanah, but here's an opinion that by meiser go by Tu B'Shvat. So if it budded before Tu B'Shvat, then you might is part of the previous year. If it buds after Tu B'Shvat, then Misasal goes after the subsequent year. Rabbi Nechem said, when is this true? By a tree which makes 2 crops a year. So the crop before Tu B'Shvat is one crop, and the crop after Tu B'Shvat is another crop. But a tree which only makes 1 crop a year, such as olives and dates and carobs, even though some of the fruits already became budded prior to Tu B'Shvat, we follow by them the next year. Right? We always go after the subsequent year. So in any tree where it only produces one crop a year, so we go always after the later period, which means even the stuff which budded before Tu B'Shvat, we attribute it to the year which begins after Tu B'Shvat.
Even if the majority of it budded before.
That's right. That's what he's saying. So the Gemara doesn't like this so much. Rabbi Yochanan said, "Nagu ha'am." The people conduct themselves b'charubin only by carobs. Rabbi Nechemia. Why is that? Because by carobs, the Mepharshim bring down anyway the meiser of carobs is the Rabbana. It's not even the Rabbana. It's just a minhag, because most carobs are hefker, and hefker is exempt from meiser. People don't cultivate carobs; they're not domesticated fruit. So therefore, carobs are unique in that their whole meiser is only a chumrah anyway. So it's only a chumrah. So therefore, their Meichel and said, if you have some of the carobs on the tree which budded before Tu B'Shvat and some after Tu B'Shvat, you just throw them arbitrarily to after Tu B'Shvat. Okay? Meis Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish kum Rabbi Yochanan. Rish Lakish asked Rabbi Yochanan, how can you say this? Didn't we learn in our Mishnah, Benosh Shuach B'Shvi Shem Shania? By these white figs, their Shemitah is different. Because they produce every 3 years. Now, according to you, according to Rabbi Nechemia, according to Rabbi Yochanan rather, who quoted Rabbi Nechemia, that which grew during Shemitah should be of Shemitah. Why is that? Because since we see in our since you, Rabbi Yochanan, hold that since you Rabbi Yochanan hold like Rabbi Nechemia, at least by carobs, that we steamroll all the produce, or I should say bulldoze all the produce into 1 year. Let's say this is its year, the year after Tu B'Shvat, even though some of the produce became already mature enough before Tu B'Shvat. So let's say the same thing here. By the B'no Shuach, let's steamroll all of them into the Shemitah year, and consider all of them part and parcel of the Shemitah year. So says the Gemara, the Kibbutz Minei. Rabbi Yochanan accepted this complaint. So the Gemara will not accept this complaint. The Gemara is very upset with this complaint. Rabbi Bar Kahana said concerning this, Tamiani, I am astounded. How can Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish have asked Rabbi Yochanan this question? And he just sat there and took it. He accepted from him. V'yosivna, let Rabbi Yochanan answer Reish Lakish. On Amar Charuvin, I said, when do we steamroll everything or bulldoze everything into 1 year? By Charuvin, by Caribs, where it's only a minute to give Meiser. You want to tell me about white figs, where Shemitah Mistama is the Raisa? On Amar Minuk, I'm talking about by Caribs, so the whole concept of taking Meiser of Caribs is a Minuk. Vatamar Taloch, you're talking about the halach of Shemitah, is no comparison. On Amar Rabbi Nechemia, I said that in one case to follow Rabbi Nechemia. Vatamar Rabbanan, you're asking me from other cases which we follow Rabbanan? Elohi Charu. So why did Rabbi Yochanan Taka feel that he was vanquished by Reish Lakish? Because he folds Chi Charuvin He B'no Shuach. Just like B'no Shuach are mostly Hefker, so do Caribs are mostly Hefker. And therefore, whatever fundamental principles apply to B'no Shuach should apply to Caribs as well. He Minug, furthermore, there's no difference between Minug and Hi Halacha. They're both considered to be forms of halachic observance. And therefore, one should follow the same parameters by both. And for also, Rabbi Nechemia, Rabbanan. Rabbi Nechemia Rabbanan would both agree that if you can bulldoze all of the fruits into 1 year, whether it be before or after Tu B'Shvat, that we do so. So in any event, so now Reish Lakish's kasha is good kasha. Rabbi Yochanan never answered it. How? But we should say the same thing by B'no Shuach, that let's steamroll all of the produce of B'no Shuach into 1 year and say that's the year in which the B'no Shuach is Shemitah. Okay?
That's making a big assumption on what B'no Shuach is Hefker.
Right.
I mean, the Mishnah...
Mishnah didn't allude to that.
Right?
Right, so
It was the top headline.
Right.
Of the Mishnah.
Doesn't matter. That's what we're assuming that it's gross Hefker. Okay, Tamon Amrina says somewhere further. Over there we say, over there, they said, in Bavel, people said, Ilan Shechana Kodem Rosh Hashanah Shel Olam, a tree which budded before Rosh Hashanah of the world, meaning before Aleph Tishrei, Misaser L'Shavar. The Meiser goes after the previous year. Rosh Hashanah Shel Olam, if it goes after Rosh Hashanah of the world, Misaser L'Haba, the Meiser goes after the subsequent year, because it always goes after Chanot, after the budding. Now, according what really their agenda is, Rabbanan, is to say that the reason why we're mako by Caribs, that Caribs we follow 1 year, and by B'no Shuach we don't. By B'no Shuach we really have we really wanted to say that they don't necessarily all follow Shevi'is. Well, I shouldn't say that. Let me clarify that a little bit more. But the reason why B'no Shuach let me see if I can make this clear even to myself. Just a second.
Well, Caribs has an annual harvest, and B'no Shuach is split into every three, it's divided into thirds.
No, it's not divided into thirds, though. Oh, yeah, it is divided into thirds. Right, that's right. Right. That's good. Okay, now I remember. Right, by B'no Shuach, why don't we don't, even all those trees that are going, all the things that are going during Shemitah aren't necessarily Shemitah fruit. That's what we said, right? It's only the stuff which will ripen 2 years after Shemitah, right? So our shaila was let's bulldoze all those B'no Shuach which are on the tree during Shemitah into Shemitah year. Bulldoze, bad word. Shoehorn is a better word. Let's shoehorn them all into the Shemitah year, right? Well, like we do with Caribs. So in that the Gemara said that was Rabbi Yochanan, Reish Lakish's kasha, Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Yochanan didn't have an answer. So now the Gemara is going to give 3 answers to that. The first answer is the answer which I gave in Bavel, which is that really by Meiser, the reason why Rabbi Nechemia was willing to steamroll, to shoehorn, all the crop, both before and after Tu B'Shvat into the same year, is because really the primary way of determining what year it is for Meiser is by Rosh Hashanah. And the truth is, all this crop is between the same two, Rosh Hashanahs, right? From the Rosh Hashanah of the previous year to Rosh Hashanah of next year. It comes out in different years by Tu B'Shvat. But since Rosh Hashanah is the primary, way of fixing the day. So therefore, the Gemara says that's why Rabbi Nechemia was agreeable to shoehorn all Caribs into the same year, the year of subsequent to Tu B'Shvat. But by B'no Shuach, where they're maturing at different, they're growing at different rates vis-a-vis Rosh Hashanah, because they're growing over the course of 3 years, there's no capacity to shoehorn all of them into 1 year. Okay, that's the first answer. Okay, again, Taman Armin, Gilan Shulchan Kodem Rosh Hashanah Shel Olam, the tree which budded before the Rosh Hashanah of the world, Misasa L'Shavar, it goes Ma'aser the previous year, Lacha Rosh Hashanah Shel Olam, after Rosh Hashanah of the world, Misasa L'Abba goes after the subsequent year. So therefore, they were willing to do the shoehorn business of everything which is between one Rosh Hashanah and another Rosh Hashanah, as opposed to by B'no Shuach. However, Eisi Rabbi Yudan Bar Playa, Kumi Rabbi Yoina, Rabbi Yudan Bar Playa asked for Rabbi Yoina, Ruben. Wait a minute, it's not true. Even by Caribs, Hareim Chaitim Koidim Rosh Hashanah, some of them bud prior to the Rosh Hashanah Shoilam Vemisasin Lishla, and yet they're meistered after the subsequent year. In other words, also by Caribs also carries over from before Rosh Hashanah to after the next Rosh Hashanah. You wanted to say that it's all between two Rosh Hashanahs. It's not true. Caribs do bud before Rosh Hashanah. So it says, Lo Shmiya Le'od Amar Rabbi Chanina Bar Papa. He didn't hear that which Rabbi Chanina Bar Papa said. What did Rabbi Chanina Bar Papa say? Charuvin by Caribs Shulanu Chanoton. We learned that they never make chains before Rosh Hashanah. They only become chains after Rosh Hashanah. So therefore, all the Caribs, from the time they start making chains till the end of that year of the crop, that is all between one Rosh Hashanah and the next Rosh Hashanah. That's why we can shoehorn them all into the same year, meaning the year which begins after Tu B'Shvat. That's one answer. Says Maram Rabbi Yassi, another answer. Hey, view shlish kodem Rosh Hashanah she'olam, that really doesn't go after chanota, but rather after a third, the growth of a third of the crop. If they bring a third of the crop prior to Rosh Hashanah she'olam, prior to Rosh Hashanah, the Rosh Hashanah of the new year, right? Aleph Tishrei, Bisach and Shabbat, they go after the previous year. Lacha Rosh Hashanah she'olam, they grow a third after Rosh Hashanah of the year. Then Bisach and Haba, then they're meisured after the subsequent year. Hosi Rabbi Zira kum Rabbi Asa. So Rabbi Zira asked for Rabbi Asa. How can you say this answer? Now let's step back from me before we see the kasha. He's saying a similar answer. He's saying by there where we shoehorn things in the same year, it's because they all grew to a third of their growth between Rosh Hashanah number 1 and Rosh Hashanah number 2. The same idea. Said that in Bavel they answered that it went with Chanota. Here Rabbi Yasa saying it goes after a third, but the concept is the same concept. Okay, it's shoehorn based on Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah.
It's also saying that factually it just was that the 1/3 happens to take place
right.
after the Rosh Hashanah.
By Caribs, all the 1/3 are after Rosh Hashanah. Okay,
but if it happened before,
right, then it would be a problem. Now let's see what this is. This is a problem as we're about to bring down a problem in this regard. Hosti Rabbi Zira, Kumi Rabbi Yasser, Zira in front of Rabbi Yassi. Pa'amim shashoni ma'afilos. Sometimes the years are dark, meaning that there's a very late ripening. Umavat tamarim and dates, matilim sor, they become ripe, which is ripe. I should mean a third of their growth. Literally, matilim sor means they become cracked, just like sourdough cracks yeast, right? Cracks the dough, right, and causes the dough to split open. So tomorrow, mitilim sar la'achar Rosh Hashanah shalom. They sometimes the dates become full third ripe only after Rosh Hashanah. Ve'misasus l'shavar, and they're meiser as part of the previous year, which makes no sense according to you. You're saying the cutter point is Rosh Hashanah. So how can you meiser things which grew a third after Rosh Hashanah with the stuff which is before Rosh Hashanah? Rabbi Zira, you know what? The truth is you're right. Hypothetically, you're asking a very good question. Rabbi Zira is talking to himself. Rabbi Zira says, the truth of my question is a good question. However, lomi daite haver, I have 3 words here, I don't think he has. Right. So what Rabbi Yasa was the author of the statement. So what we're saying is, Rabbi Yasa himself holds. He says, you know what? I personally hold not like Rabbi Yochanan. Meaning I hold that you don't shoehorn into 1 year. But I'm trying to explain the Rabbi Yochanan Shita that you shiur by carobs, not by no shuach. Personally, I don't hold the shiur business, right? So therefore, yeah. So it said, so therefore, you can't ask me about why by dates we shiur them into the previous year, because really my standards are different. Could be I might hold from Tu B'Shvat to Tu B'Shvat. So therefore, dates of after Rosh Hashanah do get shoehorned into the previous year. But I was coming to answer Rabbi Yochanan and trying to explain why, according to Rabbi Yochanan, there's a distinction between carobs and b'no shuach. On him, I was explaining that this is all Rabbi Zira saying name Rabbi Yasser. On him, I was explaining that according to Rabbi Yochanan, the cut-off point is Rosh Hashanah. That's his shita. I don't personally hold that way. Okay, that's what we're saying. Not on his own accord. Have a Rabbi Yassi Omar Oda Milsul Rabbi Yassi say this. Elamina daughter Shimon Lakish is trying to fend off Rabbi Shimon Lakish's kash Rabbi Yochanan. So therefore he says if you find a price which contradicts what I'm saying, it's not my problem. It's Rabbi Yochanan's problem. I'm not expressing my own opinion. Okay? Says the Gemara, you had a third answer. Rabbi Yaakov Baracha b'Shem Rabbi Shmuel Bar Abba said, "Hey, view shlish kon." Now here's the thing the Gemara will like. He also he retains the cut point as being Tu B'Shvat. He says this is the answer Rabbi Yochanan for Rabbi Shlokish's kash Rabbi Yochanan. Hey, view shlish kodam l'chamisha sar b'Shvat. If they grew a third prior to Tu B'Shvat, misasin l'shavar they get mice of the previous year. L'achar chamisha sar b'Shvat. But if it's after chamisha sar b'Shvat, then they're misasin l'haba. They go after the next year. So even by carobs, it has to be that they grew a third before Rosh Hashanah, before Tu B'Shvat. What?
It's no different than b'no shuach.
Really, b'no shuach can't be shorn because they don't grow a third until after Shemitah is over, right? There's no the tree since they grow in succession. So therefore, each successive crop will grow a third at a different rate. But carobs, generally speaking, you can shoehorn them together because they're all going to grow a third subsequent to Rosh to Tu B'Shvat. Now the Chanota, that might be before Tu B'Shvat, but when are they going to grow a third? Only after Tu B'Shvat, and that's what allows us to shoehorn them all into after Tu B'Shvat. The fact that the third growth is going to be after Tu B'Shvat. Okay.
What about the criteria for chains?
He's saying that is not the primary criterion. The primary criterion is Havah Shlish. Vis-a-vis Meisers, at least. The primary is Havah Shlish. So even Mishia Shalshlu is not a factor, right, what you're saying. Even though, and therefore, it's not a primary factor, it's a secondary factor. And therefore, if the part of them are Mishalshal before Tu B'Shvat, and part of Mishalshal after Tu B'Shvat, since even the ones which are Mishalshal before Tu B'Shvat are not going to grow a third of their growth until after Tu B'Shvat, we follow that criteria. Rabbi 00 said, V'yos, this is good. And I'll prove it to you. By esrog we say we uproot the concept of chanata. By esrog is the sole fruit by which we go after lakita. We don't go after when it buds, but rather when it's collected. Why? Because esrog is similar to b'no shuach in this way. It grows at a staggered pace. Not all the fruit grows at the same rate. Some are ripe earlier. So we always go. We stagger it. We don't we go out, since it grows in staggered rate. So therefore we go after shas lakita. But lo akarta shnosa. Even though we uprooted the concept of chanota, we left the concept of Tu B'Shvat intact. We'd rather leave the concept of Tu B'Shvat intact because Tu B'Shvat we know is the determining factor vis-a-vis Meiser. So therefore, that's why we prefer Rabbi Yaakov Baracha's answer, which left Tu B'Shvat intact, and changed the parameter to a third instead of Mishi Shalshru. We prefer that to the other answers, which kept the parameter of, which might have kept the parameter, at least in the first answer, of Chanota, but changed the parameter to Rosh Hashanah. Okay? By virtue of that, we say that by Esrog, we'd rather change the parameter Chanota to Lakita and leave Tu B'Shvat intact. Here too, we'd rather change the parameter from Mishir Shalshu to Avot Shlish and leave the Tu B'Shvat parameter intact. That's what we're saying here. Okay? Again, by Esrog, a karta chanota v'lo a karta shnosa, we uproot the parameter of budding and go, but retain the parameter of Tu B'Shvat. The kana here too, a karta shnosa, you uproot the parameter of its year, meaning, it's bitmiya. The kan a karta shnosa v'lo a karta chanoto. Here you're going to uproot the you're going to uproot the no, it's not. And that certainly is difficult in Rabbi Yasa, was the middle shita, because Rabbi Yasa even uprooted not just the Tu B'Shvat, he made Rosh Hashanah, but he also uprooted Chanota, because he learned that it's Havah Shlish. He's the worst of both worlds. He changed the parameter A to Rosh Hashanah, and B changed it to Havah Shlish. That's much worse. So we don't like the first opinion, which is the opinion of Bavel, because there they changed the parameter from Tu B'Shvat to Rosh Hashanah. We certainly don't like the second opinion, which changed the parameter to Rosh Hashanah and also changed it from Chanota to Havah Shlish. The best, or the least evil, is Rabbi Yaakov Bar Acha's parameter, who kept Tu B'Shvat intact. He just changed it to Havah Shlish, okay, instead of Chanota.
What's the reason why we changed the parameters for Esrog?
No, the Gemara doesn't say it. The truth is, though, it's really, I guess it's a svara. Since where the things grow at a staggered rate, so we cannot go after budding, because they're not all going to bud at the same time. So it would be impossible to meiser the fruit if you went after chanota, and you'd have to follow when each one of these fruits was chonet to know, unless you label them, right? So therefore, it's more.
Same problem with white grapes.
That's true. You'd have to label them as there as well. But at least there, it's easy to tell which grew each year. But by Esrog, they're staggered within the same year. So if you followed Chanota, you'd have some Chanota before Tu B'Shvat and some after Tu B'Shvat. That would be totally, impossible. Right? Essentially impossible. So therefore, the Kula wants to go after the Lakita. Rabbi Boom Barachia Boy Komi Rabbi Zira. Miatov, this is the case. And it's an amazing question he asks here. It's a mind-boggling question. But he says, it's a Lomdisher question. Me'ato shlish rishon l'shavar. You know what? Let's look at it this way. Let's say the first third goes after the previous year. Let's say it grew a third before Tu B'Shvat, a third after Tu B'Shvat. So let's have to divide each fruit in thirds. And let's say that each fruit we should meiser on a third of it from last year, and on the next third from the next year. That's not the way we would have looked at Havah Shlish, right? We would think Havah Shlish, that fixes the entire fruit, which is in fact the Gemara's conclusion. But the Havmin of the Gemara is to say that each third can be distinct as it grows. So it says the Gemara, again, Rabbi Boom Bar Chia Boy Komi Rabbi Zera Me'ato Shlish Rishon L'Shavar Shlish Hasheni L'Haba. Right, let's have the meiser let's require 2 years of meiser in each fruit. They said no. You don't divide it that way. Shlish Rishon Kashulavo. It's hard to get to the first third. But Kav and Shuba, once it comes Miyad Godel, immediately afterwards it grows very quickly to full term. Which I think means that the first third is the primary component. And then the next third, since that's already, so to speak, easy, so we don't have to take that, we don't have to be concerned with that. That's what I think the pshat is.
So how are you going to know which is the first third and which is the second?
You won't, which means you'll be stuck. Right, agreed. It's true, it'll present the problem. But the Gemara doesn't give that answer. The Gemara doesn't say it's practically impossible, that we have to be pragmatic about it. The Gemara doesn't give an answer. Rabbi Bar, Abba said, Kari, Suman, Rabbi Zira. Wow, like an expert sharecropper, Rabbi Zira said this. Wow, he's a real botanist. He knows that this stuff grows so quickly after the first third. Psh, I don't think he's being sarcastic. Because the Gemara goes on to say, Kahada de Shmuel. You don't have that, right? Like that what Shmuel said. Tamar Shmuel, Shitin Yoimin. In the first 60 days, Shita Ale 6 leaves grow. Shita Yoimin, in the next 6 days, Shitin Ale 60 leaves grow. Okay? So in other words, once you get to the first third, so then things go zip zip, and what? Snowballs. So the first third is primary. Tanya Rishim Gamli Omer, Mino Tzos Alin Barapagim. This is the rate of growth from the time that the leaves sprout until it gets to be unripe figs. Chamish Yom, it's 50 days. Mirapagim Rashitim, from the time it becomes unripe figs until it becomes Ashitin Anoivlos, which is a further stage in the fruit but not fully developed. It's another Chamish Yom, it's another 50 days. Ashitin Anoivlos Hateim, until it's 50 fully ripe. Chamish Yom, another 50 days. 150 days altogether. Rabbi Yomer, Kulan Arbaim Yom, each stage is 40 days, so it's 120 days altogether. Right? 40, 40, 40. Let's say you gathered a fig. You don't know when its chanota was. You need to know whether it was before or after Tu B'Shvat. If it's fully developed, so you count 100 days previously, because that's the time of chanota when it was a pag that was 100 days ago, according to Rosh Gamliel. According to Rebbe, it was 80 days ago. If Tu B'Shvat came in the interim, so you know the chanota is from the previous year, and then you meiser it based on the previous year. Okay? Do you have Rabbi Yehuda Chule? Well, you should. Tani. Rabbi Yehuda, our Mishnah said, that parsos grow in 2-year cycle. So they said it's not true. So it says more Tani, we learned Omele, they said, there are some parsos, the Persian dates with you in Tveria. They know this is Shana Achas. So they make it, they produce in 1 year. So Amrlam Sharbilah said, you have Persian dates in Tzipori. They only grow in 2 years. So the truth is, in Tveria, it's nice and warm. It's down by the Kinneret, and it's in a valley. In Tzipori, it's already more hilly and cooler climate. So there was a difference between the two. So the shaila is really how we look at the other locations. Everybody agrees in Tveria it takes only 1 year. Everybody agrees in Tzipori it takes 2 years to grow. Shaila is every other location like Tzipori or like Tveria? And this, of course, the machlokas in Metzius. Okay, it's actually machlokas and how things grow. Okay, halacha base. Now you're going to have to do a lot of going back and forth here because they divided up this Mishnah and this halacha and my Gemara here into four separate segments. Okay? Hatomin is haluf. Now I looked up aloof. Aloof is an obscure type of onion. It's called. Did you know that onions are a member of the lily family? Do you care? Onions are part of the lily family. I don't know what nafkamina that is. I guess if lilies if they produce vegetables, they'd be hadama. Okay? If you ate a lily pad, you make hadama. Stacy. Okay. So tell me that aloof is an obscure kind of onion, and it's called an arum. Okay? In any event, so told me it's a Yerushalmi Shevi'is. They would sometimes, we had this previously in Shas, you would store these loof in the ground. It's like in a root cellar. Except you would dig a hole in the ground, stick them in. So Shas, how many can you put together in a storage area? How many? Yeah, the less you put in, the worse off you are, because the more it looks like you're planting. So what's the minimum amount of loof you have to have in one of these storage areas in order to be permissible to store during Shemitah? You'd have to have two measures which reach up to a height of 3 tefachim. The tefach over agabav, and there are 1 tefach underground. Excuse me. You need to have 4 kab, which is a third of the measure, Reb Meir, and also a gova tefach will always be a tefach high, which is also a third of the measure, Reb Meir. The tefach over agabav and a tefach above are on top of it. The tom, though, when you do put these into storage, it has to be Mamokum Jesus Ragli in an area where people walk. Because when people walk, it prevents the loof from growing, from sprouting. So this way everybody knows that it's not planted in order to grow. Okay, go to the Gemara. Ad Kedon loaf. That's loaf. But what about regular onions? Rabbi Yoina, he loaf, he b'tzon. Same thing, loaf and onions. Rabbi Yossi mistabra. No. Makes more sense to say b'psalim afilu pachas mikam mutar. Even if you have less onions, it's permissible to stockpile them in the ground during Shemitah. Why? To inun shafyon. They're smooth. And he explains at the bottom that loof has roots which grow out of all parts of the bulb, whereas onions only have roots which grow out of the bottom of the bulb. They're smooth all around. So therefore, we're more lenient with storing onions because it looks much less like you're planting because they grow out of roots less diffusely. Okay? Going back to the Mishnah. Luf shavar love Shevi'is. That's an interesting thing here. The Gemara is going to change what the Mishnah is talking about, but let me learn the Mishnah Pshuta and then we'll see how the Gemara changes it. A loof grows during Shemitah. It grows throughout Shemitah. Rabbi Lezer, im lokto anim es olav, during Shemitah, of course, it's hefker. If the anim collected the leaves during hefker, lokto. Yeah, that's theirs. What im lav? What if they forgot to collect or they didn't get around to it? And now it's already the 8th year. Yasa cheshbon anim. You have to give the anim an amount which approximates what they could have collected during Shemitah. Even though they missed their opportunity, you have to give them an amount which approximates that. Gemara is going to ask why you should have to do it. We're going to deal with that in the Gemara. Now, so Rabbi Yoshua argues. Rabbi Shmuel loktu anim es olav. If they collected during Shemitah, yes, fine, loktu. And if not, if they miss Shemitah, ein lanim olav cheshbon, they don't have the right to demand. Well, what we could have collected, you have to give to us. Okay, let's go to the Gemara. Rabbi Avo b'shem Rabbi Yochanan said, Asid Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Yehuda is going like Rabbi Lezer, and Rabbi Yossi is going like Rabbi Yoshua. Now, in order to understand this, we need some background information. Really, in the Mishnah talking about case where he uprooted the loof and then left the leaves in the field, and they grew on their own during Shemitah. In the meantime, as they were leaves, when they were seen there as leaves, he did a shiur on them. Shiur meaning that he renounced ownership in them. We have a machlo now, it's the 8th year came, and the stuff which he renounced during Shemitah is mixed in with the stuff which grew during the 8th year. Because remember, he left the leaves out there, and they now took root, the leaves themselves, and grew. So now he's got stuff which was Shevi'is, but on which he did shiur, mixed in with stuff which is Shminis. The stuff which is the 8th year is for sure his. That's not a question. The stuff which is the 7th year, that's the Shiloh. Can he take that as well, or does that belong to the Anim? And this is contingent on the Machlokas. What is the status of crop after you do shiur on it? We, Bisman Azeh Paskin, anybody can take it. But at the time the Gemara is a Machlokas, after shiur, whether the guy can take it back into his house as his own, or has to go to the Anim. It's one of the Matnos Anim. So our Mishnah is our Mishnah. They're arguing whether you have to make a cheshbon anim or not. That machlokas is in essence the machlokas. What's the status of fruit of Shemitah after shiur? Is it considered to belong to the anim, or is it considered to belong even to the Baal Boss? Okay, that's what Gemara is going to say here. Yeah, right. But the limited hefker actually means here the limited hefker normally say we usually paskin limited hefker is not hefker, but here it's the antithesis of that. Here we're paskin that opinion that limited hefker is preferable, or that's in fact the case. But we don't paskin. We paskin here it's bona fide hefker. The way we paskin it's really hefker for everybody.
The owner makes it hefker and then
that's this case. And this is a machlokas, no, but we never quoted the machlokas before. It's the first time we learned there's a machlokas if that in fact is applicable. Okay? The Tanita we learned of the anim ochlim lachar shiur, anim can eat after shiur, avalo ashirim, but not rich people. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yosemer, echad anim ve'echad ashirim ochlim lachar shiur, they're allowed to eat after shiur. And that our Mishnah, when it says that you have to make cheshbon anim, that's like Rabbi Yehuda. And says you don't have to make cheshbon anim, that's like Rabbi Yosef. Now, Rabbi Ami asks a very fundamental question based on a concept we have not yet seen in our Masechta, but which is one of the most germane concepts in all of Shemitah. Rabbi Ami poik Rabbi Yochanan, kum Rabbi Yochanan, leis kamishum svichim. The halacha is any vegetable, not fruit, any vegetable or grain which grows during Shemitah is also to eat. Now, this is if it starts growing during Shemitah and grows during Shemitah. Why is that? This is called Isser Sfichim. This is a major problem with Manazeh and Eretz Yisrael, because the people who rely on the Heter Mechira, there is no Shemitah in Eretz Yisrael. The people who don't rely on the Heter Mechira can't eat any of that crop, because l'shita sam it's all Sfichim, and Sfichim are usher to eat altogether. There's no Heter. This doesn't apply to fruit. I want to make this clear. It doesn't apply to fruit of a tree. Fruit of a tree is not Sfichim. Sfichim is only stuff which grows during Shemitah, even wild, because it's most according to most opinions, it's Gzeir Rabban, although we will see in a moment that being in D'Oraisa, lest you come to plant yourself. Trees, it's not relevant, because trees generally grow for multiple years at a time. So if they didn't make a Gzeir of Sfichim by trees, Sfichim by trees, but they made the Gzeir of Sfichim by anything which grows out of any crop, whether it be vegetable or grain which grows out of the ground. So ask one of the obvious question: this loof, after it's Sfichim. It's not. It grew during Shemitah. It left the leaves out there and they grew. So that should be also because of Sfichim. Now, what's the shaila of eating it? Make a cheshbon on him, not make a cheshbon on him. It's also to eat. Period.
Isn't there kedusha of something that grows?
Kedusha during Shemitah is stuff which started growing before Shemitah and then grew during Shemitah. But stuff which started growing from the get-go in Shemitah, it's aser. It's not just kadosh, it's aser. That's Sfichim. Okay, you see the difference? Very basic difference. Okay, so he said, Masdisa Chlo goes Sfichim. So Rabbi Yechanan said, or Rabbi Ami proposed to Rabbi Yechanan. Yeah, I think Rabbi Ami proposed to Rabbi Yechanan that perhaps our Mishnah talking about before they made the Gzeir and Sfichim, because there's a Gzeir D'Rabbanan. Amar Lei, so Rabbi Yechanan said back to him, so were you on the second floor they made that Gzeir? When all Gzeir Chazal, for some reason they made on second floors. They always made him an aliyahs. No, I don't know why. But anyway, they always so Rabbi Yochanan made a mockery of him. He said, "Were you there? That you know when they made the gzeira?" So Rabbi Ami misunderstood Rabbi Yochanan and thought what Rabbi Yochanan was saying was that Amru Isur Svichim Divrei Torah, that Svichim are D'Oraisa. That's what is making mockery of him. In fact, later on in the Masech we'll see that it's not Dvar Torah D'Oraisa, it's the Rabbanan. It's making mockery of him. How do you know when they made the gzeira? Okay. So Rabbi Yirmiyah said, so Taka, what's it say about our Mishnah? So it says, Gemara, Rabbi Yirmiyah says, Baalei luf shoitei masnisa. Our Mishnah is about idiot luf. Now what's idiot luf? It's a bitter and not good to eat. And we're going to learn later in the Masech that there is one escape hatch on this Sfichim, stuff which grows in a field which was not intended to, which was let's see later on. Let me leave this for now. This is the. I got confused. This is a specific independent heter in and of its own. Stuff which is bitter and inedible doesn't fall into the category of Sfichim, even if it grows during Shemitah, because people are never going to plant it, so they didn't make it part of the Gzeira. So it says Rabbi Yirmiyah, our Mishnah tell you about the leaves of an idiot loof which people would never plant in their right mind. I say Rabbi Yishia Masdisa, the Bar Kapora means Ramis. Rabbi Yishia brought a brisa, which Bar Kapora had brought from the south, the tiny bone, which it says Ale Luf Ale Psolim. It said our Mishnah. It said concerning our Mishnah, it's not just talking about loof leaves, but also onion leaves. And Yislach Lameimer Ali B'Tzolim M'Shoitim, there's no such thing as an idiot onion. So therefore, Rabbi Yirmiyah's answer is not a good answer. L'chayra. We didn't want to say our Mishnah is talking about idiot onions where there's no Gzeir of Sfichim. Idiot loof, there's no Gzeir of Sfichim. What are you going to say about onions? There are no idiot onions. There's loof shoit, there's no batzul shoit. Now, the Rabbi Yirmiyah will address this, but first we have a parenthetical remark. Milsa the Rabbi Yirmiyah Amra. we should know from the word from Rabbi Yirmiyah we can derive. Literally, the words of Rabbi Yirmiyah teach us davar sheyesh lo biur, something which is susceptible to biur, meaning the leaves. Shenim tzemsach davar she'ein lo biur, which is mixed together with stuff which has no biur, meaning the roots, because the roots are not susceptible to biur. They don't have to be uprooted from the ground and made hefker. Yesh lo biur, they have biur. Both even the leaves do have biur, because according to Rabbi Yirmiyah, our mission is talking about a case where it's alei luf shoyte. I was saying that even though luf shoyte really has no biur, that you don't uproot it in order to make a biur on it. Nonetheless, the leaves do have a biur. So that means that we can divide the plant into two and say that even though the root doesn't have a biur, the leaves do have a biur. Now the truth is, I don't know why this is only going to Rabbi Yirmiyah. According to Rabbanan, this is also true. We're talking about a regular luf, so also the roots in the ground don't require biur. You leave the bulb in the ground till next year. It's the leaves which require biur. So I know why this is only according to Rabbi Yirmiyah. Be that as it may, Mavale Rabbi Yirmiyah. How does Rabbi Yirmiyah Taka going to learn? It's a good kasha. Rabbi Yirmiyah can't learn stuff about luf shoyte anymore because then that doesn't apply to botzel. So this is why I'll give you a very different answer. Pasalei Rabbi Yirmiyah explains b'shashike falin. It's an interesting thing. Really, we're talking about a bona fide luf, a smart luf. And what you did is erev Shemitah, before Shemitah began, you beat the leaves off. And then the leaves took root during Shemitah. Here there's no Isser of Svichim. High grew during Shemitah, so on this is where I got mixed up. He brings down later on, we're going to see that a heter, there's an escape hatch, which is that if you have a fallow field or a field which was plowed, and you really didn't want anything to grow there, you wanted to remain fallow or plowed until the year after Shemitah when you would plant there. If Svichim grew in that field during Shemitah, those Svichim are permissible. Because they were against your will. You didn't want anything to grow there. So too here, if you beat the leaves off the tree before Shemitah, even if then the leaves sprouted during Shemitah, that's not considered to be Svichim. And that's the case our Mishnah is talking about. That's the case where it's not Svichim, because you beat the leaves off Erev Shemitah, yet it has Kedusha Shevi'is because it then grew during Shemitah, and that's why, according to we have Machlokes, in that case you have to make a Cheshbon Danim to give it to him or not. Okay, that's the case we're talking about. Okay, so there's no Svichim, yet there is Kedusha Shevi'is. Rabbi Yasa Poter Lamasis, Rabbi Yasa learned our Mishnah, Lifnei Rosh Hashanah Shel Shevi'is. That's talking about before the Rosh Hashanah of Shemitah. How so? Not Lifnei Rosh Hashanah Shel Shevi'is. You planted the luf before Rosh Hashanah of Shemitah. So that's already, it's no Isser of Svichim, because it was planted before Rosh Hashanah. Vasa Beitzim, it made eggs, which is a euphemism, means it grew. It just means it grew. Lifnei Shvi'is, before Shvi'is, a little bit. And then, Rikno, you almost uprooted Bishvi'is, in Shvi'is itself, but you fully uprooted V'akrav and Motzoi Shvi'is. You fully uprooted Motzoi Shvi'is. So during Shemitah you partially uprooted it, but you didn't fully uproot it. And that we have a shaila, a suffix. If you're going to say that when you almost uprooted it, it's if you mamish uprooted it, so then kulo lanim havi, it belongs to lanim in its entirety. Because when did you uproot it? During Shemitah. If almost uprooting equals uprooting, so it's as if it was harvested during Shemitah. Anything which is harvested during Shemitah is to the anim, because it did beer on it and now belongs to anim. However, in Tamar, in Rikun Kikor, if you're going to say that the almost uprooting, it ain't uprooted till it's uprooted, right? So then Rikun is not like Kikor, and Kulanim, none of it goes to anim, because when was it ultimately uprooted and harvested? Only during the 8th year, so therefore it shouldn't go to anim at all. That's why in our Mishnah we make a cheshbon give to anim, not because anim own part of it. No. It's not that they own part of it, rather we're mesupuk of anim own any of it. They could own the whole thing, they could own none of it. So it's a suffix, when we suffix yasa cheshbon anim, meaning with suffix you make a compromise with anim and give them part and not the whole thing. Okay? Rabbi Chizkiah Patel Amasi, so yet another interpretation of our Mishnah. Rabbi Chizkiah explained our Mishnah that's talking about Be'er Erev. Now what do you have here? Okay, so he takes out the Rosh Hashanah shell. Because Erev Rosh Hashanah Shvi'is sounds like you planned in Mamish Erev Rosh Hashanah, which would be the exact same thing as the previous Rabbi Yasa. He means you planted it years ago. Remember, loof can stay in the ground for years on end. So it's talking about a loof which grew for several years before Shemitah. So Erev Shvi'is means it's a year or 2 years before Shemitah begins. Okay? Not to Erev Shvi'is. Again, he takes off the Rosh Hashanah shell. He planted it sometime before Shvi'is. Vasa bitzo, and it grew. And he takes out the word betchilas and substitutes Erev Shvi'is. Right? It grew before Shvi'is. Verikno, and you almost uprooted it. He changed the next thing to Erev Shvi'is, to just before Shvi'is. Vakra, and then he left in the ground throughout the Shemitah year until till the end of Shemitah. Right? Now, in Tamar Rikun Kikor, if you're going to say, if you say almost uprooted, it's like uprooting, Kulo Kabal Bais. It goes to the Baal Bais. Why does it go? Because when did you do Rikun? Before Shemitah began. In Tamar, in Rikun Kikor, if you're going to say that almost uprooted is not like uprooting, and Kulo Baal Bais, it doesn't mean you belong to Baal Bais, because when did you completely uproot it? During Shemitah itself. Towards the end of Shemitah, but during Shemitah itself. So therefore, here too, it's a Safek, Misafek, Yatzach, Heshbaraniyim. From a Safek, since you don't know whether Rikun is Kikor or not, you make a pshara, you make a compromise with the Aniyim. Tani, we learned, Luf Sharva Love Shvi'is. A loof over which Shvi'is passed. Rabbi Lezer Omer, Imasa Bar Shalosh Shayim was in the ground for 3 years. No son, Plot Shemitah. No son named Rovi, give that name a quarter. Shteshim is in the land for 2 years plus Shemitah. No son named Shlisha, give that name a third.
Just go back to the Mishnah.
No. You don't have this? You don't have Tanya? It's a Bryce? The whole thing you don't have?
No.
What's the next thing you have? Okay, so you just don't have the first line here. I have Tanya Lufshar of Loshvis or Blazer Omer. Now pick up again. Imas Abar Shalosh Shonim. If the loof was in the ground for 3 years plus Shemitah, so no Sanim Robi, give that name a quarter, because 1 and 3 is a quarter. Shtei Shaim, 2 years plus Shemitah, so Shlisha, give that name a third. Shana Achas plus Shemitah, no Sanim Mechti, give that name a half. Now Rabbi Yasa, how does Rabbi Yasa learn? This is a brayta. How does Rabbi Yasa learn this brayta? Patam Asisa Shanot Livnei Rosh Hashanah Shel Shvi'is. You planted it Rosh Hashanah, before Rosh Hashanah of Shemitah, and it stayed in the land past Shemitah for another 3 years, or 2 years, or 1 year, and that's how the Cheshbon works. Because that's Rabbi Yasa's Shita, that you planted immediately before Rosh Hashanah. Rabbi Chizkiah Pater Masisi, he explains this price of Shanoto Erev, and here he changes it again. Shanoto Erev Shvi'is, you planted it substantially before Shemitah. Either 3 years, 2 years, or 1 year before Shemitah. So it's the same thing, just looking at it differently. It's either the several years and then the Shemitah itself, or the Shemitah and then several years after. But it's, again, according to both of them, the question is whether Rikun is Ki'ikor and when you did the Rikun. Did you do the Rikun, which is the almost uprooting, immediately prior to Shemitah, and then you uprooted during Shemitah, and the suffix is whether Rikun is Ki'ikor, or you did the uprooting, the almost uprooting during Shemitah, and the entire uprooting after Shemitah, and then the suffix is the same way. Okay, Rabbi Boon Barchia Ba, here Ba is stated, Kumei Rabbi Zera in front of Rabbi Zera, Ap B'shar Shnei Shavuot Chen. This is true also about Meiser during other years of Shemitah. But Tani, we learned this in a Brisa. This if it's the second, it's amazing takara. You're in the second year of the cycle, going into the third year. Eino Mirakno. You're not allowed to almost uproot it during the second year. Nor, you're not allowed to prevent water, stop irrigating it for 30 days. Why? Because if you do that, then it might be affiliated with the second year. What ma'aseh do you give in the second year? Ma'aseh Sheni. What ma'aseh do you give during the third year? Ma'aseh Ani. So we didn't want you to be meracking it in the second year, because then you'd be giving Ma'aseh Sheni. We prefer that you leave it for the third year and then give Ma'aseh Ani. humanitarian takana, right? So you're not allowed to be Moroccan and almost uprooted, nor, which is treated the same thing, prevent water from coming to for 30 days prior to Rosh Hashanah, because then you get Meiser Sheni. We want you to have rather Meiser Sheni, Meiser Ani. And the opposite is true therefore as well. It's the Shlishis Nichnas Reis. You're going from the 30th to the 4th year. So then we encourage you, Merakno, do almost uprooted, and be Moneh Min Menu Mayim in the 3rd year, Bishvil Sheyehei Meiser Ani, or there should be Meiser Ani. Hadam Rosh, Rikun Kiikor. This teaches us. This opinion holds, this price holds, that when you almost uproot it, it's like uprooting it, and therefore it goes to the aniyim on that basis. Okay, let's go back to the Mishnah. I just want to finish till the next Mishnah, which is not much further, right? Yeah. Okay, let's go back to the Mishnah for a minute. Luf shel erev Shevi'is, a luf which is grown erev Shevi'is, and started growing erev Shevi'is, so it's not spichim. Shenichel Shevi'is, and then grows into the 7th year. So then it has Kedusha Shevi'is. It's not speaking because it started growing before Shevi'is, but it has Kedusha Shevi'is. Also summer onions. Chitzonim is summer. Pua, what? Not zealous onions. Pua Shalitis, and so too if you have a plant which grows colors, which is Shalitis means of a fine field. Idis, Benis, and Ipuris. The Sharmei myself, when it goes to Shemitah, it has Kedusha Shevi'is. So therefore, you have to be okerit with a shinui. Normally, you uproot these things. These are roots, bulbs. So you uproot them usually by hand. But here you have to make a shinui. So you have to do marofa shalit with wooden hose. It's a double shinui, a hoe and wood. Rabbi Basil made one sheet is enough. Kardoma shemal techas. You can use pickaxes, so it can be metal, but it has to be can't be with your hands. Umodim bepur shel tzlos. Everybody agrees, however, if it's the color plant which grows in a rocky land, shokin esoper kardoma shemal techas. There you can use metal picks. Why? Because it doesn't look. The reason why we require such a dramatic scenery is because otherwise it looks like you're working the land, right? Because after all, you're uprooting the growth there, so it looks like the flip side is they're preparing the land for planting. So we're not worried about this in a rocky area. It doesn't look like you're preparing the land for planting in any way, shape, or form. So therefore, in that case, you're allowed even to use, even Beis Hillel said, Beis Shammai says, you don't need a double shinui. A single shinui is enough, it could be with pickaxes. Okay, back to the Gemara. Rabbi Yasser b'shem Rabbi Lo. Tipater sha'ok, I wrote an article, I was telling Reb Meir before you came in, I wrote an article today for the Jewish Observer about the Yerushalmi. So I mentioned all your names, by the way, in a footnote.
Oh, really?
Yes, we'll see. So there are only 3, so I might as well mention them, right? So it's kind of, they don't know you are. Little do they know. So
all those tellers are with the Jews.
yeah. So I was tried to quote some of the oddities, some of the interesting things about the Yerushalmi. So one of the things I forgot, I should talk. I think you put in this Rabbi Lo, because every time you come across his name, you're liable to make the mistake that it's Lo Tipater instead of Rabbi Lo. That's one of the interesting things which throw you off. Anyway, Rabbi Yasser b'shem Rabbi Lo said, Tipater, explain our Mishnah, Sha'akru at Shalot Simchot Samchu Gidulot. You have to, he wants to say that this is before it grows. We're talking about our Mishnah before it grows, because once it grows, new growth, those have full Kedusha Shevi'is, and therefore you have to let them grow 2 term, because otherwise you're being Ma'abed Pero Shemitah. So it's the growth of the 6th year at the beginning of the 7th year before it starts growing new buds or new leaves, whatever the case would be. Summer ones, Petra. Petra in Greek is Petra. Petra means rock. Right, Petra is the what? The rock in Jordan. Right, Petra. Yachrosh. If it's in a rocky area, you know what? You can even plow and linakesh if you want to pluck them out. You can pluck them out. You don't have to make any shini whatsoever. You know why? Because in rocky area, it doesn't look like you're preparing the soil. All right, let's go back to the Mishnah for last time. Why could a person buy loof in the marketplace Motzei Shevi'is and assume it's not from the Shemitah year? Rabbi Omer miyad, immediately. Once the new crop is prevalent. So the Gemara asks the obvious question, getting back to the Gemara, my time is Rabbi Yehuda, what's the logic of Rabbi Yehuda? Why can you buy immediately? Says I'm going to tell you why. Because Gazru al haluf, lo Gazru al hayerek. It's they made a decree that loof, if you uproot it during Shemitah, you have to make a shinui on it. So farmers are not going to uproot loof during Shemitah. When are they going to uproot it? After Shemitah. Because then they don't have to make a shinui. Right? They don't have to use the hose or the pickaxe or whatever they're using. So therefore, and mistama, the loof started growing much earlier, right? Because it's a bulb which stays in the land for several years. So therefore, farmers are assumed to take stuff which grew from before Shemitah and is only picked now after Shemitah, and therefore you can take it immediately after Shemitah. So that's why mi'ata afilu b'shvi'is yeh muter. You know what? If that's the case, let's even be allowed to buy the loof from them during Shemitah, and we'll assume that they picked it from before Shemitah. Because nobody picks loof during Shemitah. It's like you have to make a shina. Everybody much rather pick before Shemitah. Says Mar b'tomananu kayami. You know what? We're afraid that the guy's going to lie and he's going to say, "Oh yeah, I had them from Erev Shemitah. Of course, I picked them Erev Shemitah," but he's lying. He really was chashed al Shvi'is, and he maybe picked them during Shemitah, and he's lying to tell you picked them before Shemitah. Shlo yelech v'yavi min iser. We're afraid he's going to bring stuff which is also. V'yomer say, "Oh, of course, min atomei v'etz. I bought the stuff which I already had safekept from before Shemitah." Tanya Ra'omer Rabbi Yehuda Ma'aser Sheina Bein Kushim. We're once in the fountain of the blacks. V'chalnu loof, and we ate loof al pi Rabbi Tarfon b'motzoi chag shel motzoi Shvi'is. Immediately after Sukkot, it's motzoi Shvi'is, which is a raya like me, that it's immediately mutter right after Shemitah. Amar Rabbi Yossi said, "You're suffering from amnesia. Im chayisi, you were with me. V'loya ela motzoi Pesach. It was 6 months later, which makes it a whole different story. Misha Yarbach.